lecture, and in today's video lecture I will be solving previous year's NEET questions and discussing the answers. And as you can see on your screen, we are doing this for the chapter digestion and absorption, and we are in part 3 of the series. So you haven't checked out part 1 and 2, please do so. The links will be there in the description box. All right, okay, so let's not waste more time and let's begin. Okay, question number 1. Which of the following gastric cells indirectly help in erythropoiesis? Okay, this appeared in NEET 2018. Okay, let me just change the pen. Yep. Okay. Sorry, I had to do some adjustments here. Okay, so which of the following gastric cells indirectly help in erythropoiesis? So you have A, chief cells, B, mucus cells, C, goblet cells, D, parietal cells. Okay, and your answer should be D, parietal cells. Okay, answer D. Let's go to the discussion. So parietal cells, they are also known as oxyntic cells. Okay, that's another name. So if you find oxyntic cells named in the question, so you know they're talking about parietal cells. They secrete hydrochloric acid and a glycoprotein called intrinsic factor. Okay, so there are two functions of parietal cells. They secrete HCl and a glycoprotein called intrinsic factor. Now, what is the intrinsic factor? Okay, it is essential for absorption of vitamin B12. So indirectly, what are the parietal cells doing? They are helping in the erythropoiesis, the maturation of erythrocytes. If you go back to part 2, remember we spoke about maturation of erythrocytes, which one are the factors? There was a question like that. So vitamin B12 is clearly the answer to that. So intrinsic factor helps in the absorption of vitamin B12. So what happens? The intrinsic factor combines with the vitamin B12 in the food. Okay, so we consume vitamin B12 in our food, and the intrinsic factor combines with that and makes it available for absorption in the gut. So what it does, it binds tightly to vitamin B12 to protect it from digestion. Okay, so lots of enzymes in the intestine, okay, that are performing digestion, so that vitamin B12 does not get degraded. The intrinsic factor protects it from digestion. And this complex then attaches to receptors on the brush border epithelium of the mucosal cells in the ileum. So the mucosa, there's brush border epithelium, okay, and so this complex that is formed, the intrinsic factor and the vitamin B12, they attach to the receptors, okay, of that brush border epithelium of the mucosa. Now this complex is then transported into the blood via pinocytosis. Okay, this is the method by which the complex that is formed moves into the cell and then into the blood. Okay, and is stored in the liver cells in large quantities. Okay, and is released as and when it is required by the bone marrow. Clear? Okay, so once it enters the blood, it gets stored in the liver cells, and as and when the bone marrow needs it, it gets released from the liver cells. So if there is a lack of intrinsic factor, okay, it will decrease the availability of vitamin B12. For some reason, the parietal cells are not secreting the intrinsic factor, okay, so then vitamin B12 will not have a complex to bind to, okay, so then vitamin B12 will not be able to go into the blood, get absorbed into the blood, okay, from the intestine. So the lack of intrinsic factor will decrease the availability of vitamin B12 due to the inability of absorption of vitamin B12. Okay, so obviously now to answer your question, let's go back to our question. Which of the following gastric cells indirectly help in erythropoiesis? Okay, so they don't help directly. How? Obviously, the intrinsic factor is not helping directly in the erythropoiesis, right? So it's attaching itself to vitamin B12 and making it available for absorption, right? So this is an indirect way. This is actually a good question. It's a very logical question that they've asked. For once, it's not a very direct question, so you need to apply your theory into this and then see which is the correct answer. Okay, so Yeah, this was quite recent, 2018, right? So yeah, D is your right answer. Okay, another thing apart from vitamin B12 that is important in maturation of erythrocytes, folic acid is also important in maturation of erythrocytes, okay, which I've already discussed in part 2. Okay, so clear. We'll move on to the next question. Question number 2. Which of the following options best represents the enzyme composition of pancreatic juice? And this appeared in NEET 2017. Okay, so we need to find the enzyme composition of pancreatic juice. So you have A. Amylase, pepsin, trypsinogen, maltase. B. Peptidase, amylase, pepsin, renin. C. Lipase, amylase, trypsinogen, procarboxypeptidase. And D. Amylase, peptidase, trypsinogen, renin. Okay, clearly you see pepsin, it does not belong to the pancreatic juice, right? Pepsin belongs in the stomach, the gastric juice. Again, pepsin and renin, again, this is incorrect. So you have lipase, amylase, trypsinogen, procarboxypeptidase. So this is the correct answer. The last one, again, renin is found in the gastric juice of infants and young mammals. Okay, so answer is C. So this was it was very important for you to know what is secreted, what is present in the pancreatic juice. Let's go to the discussion. Yeah, so pancreatic juice contains trypsinogen, chymotrypsinogen, procarboxypeptidase, amylase, lipase, and nuclease. Okay, so these six components are there in the pancreatic juice. These are enzymes. So please remember, make a list of this in your notebooks. This is very important. Okay, so clear. This was direct. I don't think there was any logic behind this. If you knew your theory, you would have been able to answer this properly. Okay, next question. Question number 3. In the stomach, gastric acid is secreted by the, and it appeared in 2016. So you have A. peptic cells, B. acidic cells, you have C. gastrin secreting cells, and D. parietal cells. So we just discussed this in question 1. Gastric acid is secreted by the parietal cells. Answer D. Okay, oxyntic cells or parietal cells, they are also called that, and they secrete HCl, which is the gastric acid. So the discussion, gastric acid is HCl and is secreted by the parietal cells or oxyntic cells. Right? Clear? Direct? There was no need for any explanation in this. Very theoretical. Okay, next question. Okay, so question number 4. The enzyme that is not present in Succus entericus. Okay, it is not present Succus entericus. What is Succus entericus? Intestinal juice. Okay, that's another name for it. And this appeared in 2015. So you have A. nucleosidase, B. lipase, C. maltase, and D. nuclease. So clearly D is your right answer. So nuclease is not present in the intestinal juice. Let's go to the discussion. Succus entericus or intestinal juice contains disaccharidases. It's maltase, example, one of them. Dipeptidase, lipase, nucleosidase, and goblet cell secretion of the mucus. Okay, so please remember this. You have this, you have dipeptidase, you have lipase, you have nucleosidase, and goblet cells secretions. Okay, clear? All this is present, is there in NCERT. Please go through your theory, right? No excuses for that. Okay, so next question. Clear? This was pretty direct. Okay, so question number 5. Gastric juice of infants contains, and this appeared in 2015. 15. There is option A, pepsinogen, lipase, renin. B, amylase, renin, pepsinogen. C, maltase, pepsinogen, renin. D, nuclease, pepsinogen, and lipase. Okay, so we are looking at infants. Okay, so infants contain an enzyme called renin. Okay, it contains renin. Then pepsinogen is also present there, and lipase is also present there, gastric lipase. Okay, so clearly your answer should be A. Should be option A. Let's go to the discussion. Now, gastric juice of infants contains pepsinogen, renin, and lipase. Please remember these components. Okay, the contents of gastric juice of infants. If they've said infants, there is renin also present there. Okay, so as the infant grows older, renin does not begins to disappear. Okay, it does not get secreted, but in infants, renin is present, and also in young mammals. Right, clear? Let's move to the next question. Question 6. Which of the following statements is not correct? And this appeared in 2015. So, not correct is our question. Okay, so please don't take the correct answer and then say, oh, it was not the correct, that was the question. Also, please read the question carefully. A. Oxyntic cells are present in the mucosa of stomach and secrete HCl. Yes, that is the correct statement. We just discussed oxyntic cells or parietal cells. Acini are present in the pancreas and secrete carboxypeptidase. Now, the acini are present in the pancreas, that's true. They secrete actually pro-carboxypeptidase, okay, the inactive form, but we'll go to the next option. C. Brunner's glands are present in the submucosa of stomach and secrete pepsinogen. Now, this is clearly wrong. C, the complete statement is incorrect. Okay, so it's actually the right answer. So Brunner's glands are present in the submucosa of duodenum. We've already discussed this in part 1 and part 2 many times. So this is like a favorite question. Okay, so please remember this. They're very exclusive. Brunner's gland are exclusive to duodenum. D. Goblet cells are present in the mucosa of intestine and secrete mucus. That's correct. So your answer should be C. So ideally, if you have to choose the most appropriate answer, yes, option C is the right answer. Let's go to the discussion. So Brunner's glands are present in the submucosa of the duodenum, and they secrete an alkaline fluid containing mucin, which protects the mucous membrane from the acidic stomach contents. Okay, so Brunner's gland are exclusive to duodenum. Clear? All right, let's move on to the next question. Question 7. The initial step in the digestion of milk in humans is carried out by, this appeared in 2014. So the initial step in the digestion of milk in humans is carried out by A. lipase, B. trypsin, C. renin, and D. pepsin. Clearly, we've already discussed this. So in infants, there is an enzyme called renin present in the gastric gland, okay, the gastric part of the body, the stomach, okay, which helps in the digestion of milk. So your option should be C, right? Let's go to the discussion. So renin is present in the form of prorenin. Now, before we move on to renin, let's understand that prorenin is actually secreted in the stomach, okay, which is an inactive form of renin. Okay, and it's found in young mammals. Now, prorenin is converted to renin in the presence of HCl. Now, you know HCl is secreted in the stomach. So what happens is this HCl converts prorenin to renin. This is another action of HCl. Apart from pepsinogen to pepsin, it also converts prorenin to renin. Okay, and this is present in infants and young mammals. Okay. So renin then converts casein into paracasein, and then with the help of calcium to form calcium paracaseinate. Now let's understand one thing. Now the milk that we consume, that infants they consume, Casein forms a very major part of the milk protein. Okay, so this is a major form of protein present in milk. Now there are four types of casein that are present there. Okay, submolecules. There are two alpha, there's one beta and one kappa. Okay, molecule. This is all detailed. I'm just giving you extra piece of information for you to understand how it works. Okay, so the kappa molecules, they don't coagulate very easily. Okay, so what happens is renin comes into the picture. So renin then breaks down those kappa molecules, and then that form becomes easy for the milk to coagulate. That means it curdles, it forms a type of like curd, like you prepare curd at home, just like that. Okay, and once that kappa breaks down in the presence of renin, and it forms para casein. Okay, this whole thing is formed para casein, and then with the help of calcium ions bind to that para casein to form calcium para caseinate. Okay, this is the final form. Okay, then calcium para caseinate is a protein which then again further breaks down into peptones with the help of pepsin. Okay, so pepsin is also present in the stomach, and that also helps in the breakdown. So initially renin plays an important role in the breakdown of the milk protein casein. Okay, that is why renin plays an important role. Just understand casein forms a major part of the milk protein. Okay, please just understand that much. You don't need to go to alpha, beta, kappa, all those molecules. I'm just giving you extra piece of information. Okay, it's the kappa molecule which then further gets broken down, and then it forms para caseinate, and then it combines with calcium to form calcium para caseinate, which is the ultimate form. Okay, the curd. Now then pepsin comes into the picture and then breaks down calcium para caseinate, okay, into peptones. It is still protein, right? So protein needs to be further broken down. So this is the story behind milk digestion. All right, but for your understanding, this statement is enough. Okay, for NEET. Clear? So let me go back to your question. The initial step in the digestion of milk in humans is carried out by renin. Clearly, that is the appropriate answer. Okay, so let's move on. Question 8. A healthy person eats the following diet: 5 grams raw sugar, 4 grams albumin, 10 grams pure buffalo ghee, adulterated with 2 grams vegetable ghee, which is hydrogenated vegetable oil, and 5 grams lignin. How many calories he is likely to get? This appeared in 2013. You have your options A, B, C, D. You'll have to do some calculations. Okay, so you have to remember some values for carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. And all this is present in NCERT. There's a box given there. It says not for evaluation there, but they are evaluating you here. You need to read that, understand, remember, recall those values, and then answer the question. So before I go into the calculation part, let me just tell you it is D. So for those of you who have already calculated this, pause the video, have already calculated well and good. You're going to do well. Okay, so your answer should be D. Let's go to the discussion. Okay. All right, so the physiological value, okay, the human physiology, the workings of the body of food is the amount of energy released in the human body due to combustion of 1 gram of food. Now there are two types of calculations. There's a gross value. So what happens is they put the food in a bomb calorimeter, okay, and with oxygen, and they see how much of energy is released in that. Okay, that's the gross value. And the physiological value is in terms of human body. So how much of energy is released in the human body due to combustion of 1 gram of food. Obviously, experimental values that you do in the lab and in the human body will slightly vary. Obviously, you will not get the exact same values. Okay, so for carbohydrates is different, for proteins is different, for fats is different. And the gross value is usually higher than the physiological value. Now, for our question, we had to look at the physiological value because the person is eating it, right? The person is eating it, and we need to find out how much calorie has that person consumed. Okay, so for carbohydrates, it's for 1 gram, it is 4 kilocalories. Okay, for proteins, for 1 gram, it's again 4 kilocalories. Fats, it's for 1 gram, it's 9 kilocalories. So fats have a lot of energy. Okay, please remember these values. Okay, if you remember these values, you can answer the question. Let's go to the calculation. So we saw first was raw sugar. So that's carbohydrates. Clearly sugar is carbohydrates. So 5 grams into 4, so 20 kilocalories. Correct. So this 5 grams of sugar that person has consumed into 4, that's for 1 gram it's 4 kilocalories. So for 5 grams it's how much? Clearly it's, simple calculation. So that's 20 kilocalories. Albumin, that's protein. So again 4 into 4, which will give you 16 kilocalories. Ghee, that's fat. So that's 9 kilocalories. So 10 into 9, that's 90 kilocalories. And vegetable ghee, that's 2 into 9, that's 18 kilocalories. Okay. Now lignin remains undigested. This was a trick question. Okay. Lignin remains undigested because lignin is a form of cellulose. Lignin is a form of cellulose. So cellulose does not get digested in our body. It just gets removed out, defecated out. Okay. So this is cellulose. So the 0 calories. It's not getting digested. There's no breakdown happening. It's not getting absorbed into our blood. So there's no energy. So lignin will be 0. So now I have to just add up all these numbers and you get 144 kilocalories. So clearly your answer was 144. So for those of you who paused the video, calculated the whole thing and got 144, good for you. We got the right answer. Okay. So clear? We'll move on to the next question. Alright, so question number 9. Which enzymes are likely to act on the baked potatoes eaten by a man, starting from the mouth and as it moves down the alimentary canal? And this appeared in 2013. Now please note it says baked potatoes. Okay, baked potatoes, that means there is carbohydrates, but there is no starch. It's a very healthy form of diet. You should have baked items compared to fried food, but that's another topic. We'll discuss that. We'll have to answer the question first. A. Pancreatic amylase, salivary amylase, lipases. So, no. Disaccharide like maltase, lipases, nucleases. No. C. Salivary amylase, pancreatic amylase, disaccharidases. Yes, because there's only carb digestion happening, carbohydrate digestion happening right from the mouth. Okay, so there's salivary amylase, then it goes to the pancreatic amylase, then further breaks down to with the help of disaccharidase. So C is your right answer. D is incorrect. So your answer is C. Okay, let's go to the discussion. Okay, so baked potatoes are composed of starch, polysaccharides, right? So hence breakdown of polysaccharides will first occur in the oral cavity, okay, with the help of salivary amylase. So saliva has salivary amylase, okay, and they convert starch to maltose. So this is with the help of salivary amylase. Clear? Then goes down to the intestine, the duodenum. Pancreatic juice is secreted out into the duodenum. So pancreatic juice contains amylase. Hence, further digestion occurs in the intestine. Okay, so again there is amylase, and polysaccharides then get converted to disaccharides. Now, please note only 30% of the digestion is happening here. It's not the complete digestion. That is why there's further breakdown that needs to occur. Obviously, there is some polysaccharide or starch still present there, which is going down into your intestine, and the rest of the digestion takes place there. Okay, so further digestion occurs in the intestine. So polysaccharides then further obviously get broken down into disaccharides, or the same maltose. Okay, maltose is a form of disaccharide. Now, Succus entericus contains maltase, okay, and hence converts maltose to glucose. Okay, so the intestinal juice, they contain maltase. So this will be with the help of maltase and forms two molecules of glucose. So the glucose is the final form that you get, and which is then absorbed into the blood. Okay, it's the most basic form. It was actually a good question. Okay, it was a trick question where they said baked potatoes. Okay, not fried potatoes. If they said fried potatoes, then yes, there will be fat present in the food, and which lipase will have to then act to break down the fat. Okay, it breaks down the fat so that it can be absorbed into the blood. So to answer your question, yes, so it's mostly salivary the amylase, which is the acting on the food. Where is that? Yeah, amylase, which is acting on the food, and then finally disaccharidases, which forms the basic form of the carbohydrates, which is glucose. Okay, so this was actually a good question. All right, so next question. Clear? So please read the question carefully before you decide on what option to choose. Okay, so question number 10. If for some reason our goblet cells are non-functional, this will adversely affect, and this appeared in 2010. A. Production of somatostatin? No. B. Secretion of sebum from the sebaceous glands? No. C. Maturation of sperms? No. D. Smooth movement of food down the intestine? Yes. So D is the right option. Answer is D. Okay, let's go to the discussion. Okay, so goblet cells, we know, secrete mucus. By now you should be aware of that, okay? And they secrete mucus on the epithelial surface. Now this mucus is very lubricant, okay, very slippery. So it acts as a lubricant and also protects the layer from the digestion. So since it's a lubricant, food easily moves down the intestine. Moreover, another function of the mucus is that it protects the intestinal layer from the digestion. Clear? So this were the two functions of the goblet cells. It was pretty direct. If you knew the function of goblet cells, you knew your theory, you would have been able to answer this properly. Okay, so let's move on to the next question. Question 11. If for some reason the parietal cells of the gut epithelium become partially non-functional, what is likely to happen? This appeared in 2010. So we are looking at parietal cells or oxyntic cells. A. The pancreatic enzymes and especially the trypsin and lipase will not work efficiently. No. The pH of stomach will fall abruptly. pH of stomach is already fallen. I mean, the pH of stomach is already low. So parietal cells secrete HCl, which then because of that brings down the pH of the stomach. It's around 1 to 2, right? So if for some reason that they are partially non-functional or anything, the pH will not fall, it will increase only. So clearly B is wrong. Steapsin will be more effective. Now steapsin is also lipase, the fat digestive enzymes. No, not really, nothing of that sort. So D, proteins will not be adequately hydrolyzed by pepsin into proteoses and peptides. So D is your right answer. So yeah, so B. Let's go to the discussion. So parietal cells, like we know, secrete HCl, which decrease the pH levels of the stomach. Okay, and HCl is responsible for converting pepsinogen into pepsin. Okay, remember that reaction? And so proteins then, with the help of pepsin, break down into proteoses, peptones and polypeptides. Okay, so remember this reaction. Okay, so that was the answer to the question. Let's go back to the question. Yeah, so proteins, if for some reason, if the parietal cells are not functioning, proteins will not be adequately hydrolyzed, okay, by pepsin. Okay, next question then. Okay, so question number 12. Which one of the following pairs of food components in humans reaches the stomach totally undigested? Okay, this appeared in 2009. You have A, starch and fat, B, fat and cellulose, C, starch and cellulose, D, protein and starch. Now it reaches the stomach totally undigested. That's the question. Now clearly cellulose does not get digested in our body. So wherever there's cellulose, that is the right answer. But apart from that, what does not get totally, it does not remain, as in remains undigested, sorry, by the time it reaches the stomach. Now we know salivary amylase is present in the mouth, right? So carbohydrate digestion is already started in the mouth itself. Okay, by the time it reaches the stomach, clearly our correct option would be cellulose and fat. Okay, there is lipase in the stomach, but that will only happen once the food enters the stomach, right? So it is before reaching the stomach. Okay, food components in humans reaches the stomach totally undigested. So by the time the food reaches in the stomach, what remains totally undigested? Fat and cellulose is the right option. It can't be protein and starch because starch already digestion happens in the mouth. This also incorrect. So wherever there's starch, obviously that's the incorrect answer. So it is clearly B. Answer B. Let's go to the discussion. So digestion of starch begins in the mouth, as I already said, due to the presence of salivary amylase. Now, fats and protein digestion begins in the stomach. Okay, so there's lipase present in the stomach, gastric lipase, which then begins the fat digestion, and obviously pepsin is there, so that begins with the protein digestion in the stomach. So clear, right? I mean, you had to use a little bit of logic in this, right? It wasn't a direct question. Okay, so let's move on to the, obviously. Before we move on to the next question, cellulose remains undigested. Okay, next question. Question 13. Which one of the following is the correct matching of the site of action on the given substrate, the enzyme acting upon it, and the end product? So this appeared in 2008. So you have A, small intestine, proteins are converted to amino acids in the presence of pepsin. So clearly pepsin is not present in the small intestine, so incorrect. B, stomach fats convert to micelles in the presence of lipase. So that does not happen in the stomach. Incorrect. Duodenum triglycerides converted to monoglycerides in the presence of trypsin. It's incorrect. Trypsin does not do that. D, small intestine starch gets converted to disaccharide maltose, alpha amylase, okay, from the pancreas. So D is your right answer. Answer D. Those of you who got this correct, it means you know your digestion well. Okay, let's go to the discussion. So pancreatic juice contains amylase, okay, which is secreted in the small intestine and then converts starch to disaccharides. So we already discussed this before, right, when we spoke about the baked potatoes question. Okay, so starch gets converted to disaccharides and disaccharides further get converted to the monosaccharides. Oops, sorry. So next question. So if you go back to your question, yes, so in the small intestine, starch gets converted to disaccharide. This is the best answer. Okay, next question. I guess this was clear. You had to know your digestion well. You have to know which is coming from where, which enzyme is acting upon which form of food. Then it's all pretty clear to you, right? Question 14. What will happen if the secretion of parietal cells of gastric glands is blocked with an inhibitor? It's appeared in 2008. So if the parietal cell secretion is blocked with an inhibitor, so what happens? A, in the absence of HCl secretion, inactive pepsinogen is not converted into active enzyme pepsin. This seems to be the appropriate answer. We go through the other options. B. Enterokinase will not be released from the duodenal mucosa, and so trypsinogen is not converted to trypsin. No. Gastric juice will be deficient in chymosin. Now, chymosin is also another word for renin. Okay. So, partly correct. Okay, gastric juice will be deficient in chymosin because prorenin is converted to renin, but this happens only in infants. Okay, because you have to look at adults, then this doesn't seem to be the appropriate answer. Gastric juice would be deficient in pepsinogen. No. So clearly A is the appropriate answer. Okay, remember in NEET you have to find the appropriate answer. Okay, so in the absence of HCl secretion, parietal cells secrete HCl. Inactive pepsinogen is an inactive form. It will not be converted to pepsin, and this will affect protein digestion at the end. So your answer is A. Okay. So parietal cells secrete HCl and convert pepsinogen to pepsin. Okay. Simple, direct. Question. Okay, so next question number 15. Hydrolytic enzymes which act on low pH are called as, and this appeared in 2002. So we're talking about hydrolytic enzymes which act on low pH. A. Proteases, B. Alpha amylases, C. Hydrolases, D. Peroxidases. To answer your question, it's A. Proteases. Okay, an example is pepsin. Okay, which acts on low pH. For this, you had to study enzymes well to be able to answer this question. So the answer is A. Another thing is hydrolases is a type of hydrolytic enzyme. So there are many classes and subclasses in the enzyme classification. Okay, so hydrolytic enzymes contain hydrolases. Okay, and hydrolases then contain proteases, and the different forms of proteases. Okay, different examples of proteases. Clearly, alpha amylase does not act on low pH. Okay, and peroxidase is not a hydrolytic enzyme. So let's go to the discussion. We'll understand this in detail. So proteases such as pepsin formed in the stomach act at pH 2. Clearly, stomach is acidic in nature. Okay, so pepsin has that optimum environment, okay, to act on protein. So protein breakdown occurs there. Alpha amylase is in the oral cavity, acts at pH 6.4 and 7. And in the pancreas, it acts at pH 6.7 to 7. So they are more or less in the neutral pH range. They don't act at low pH. So clearly alpha amylase wasn't our right answer. Now, most of the enzymes of higher organisms show optimum activity around neutral pH. Okay, so you see alpha amylase is more or less acting around that range. Okay, so most of the enzymes do act in that range. There are obviously some exceptions. Okay, many exceptions are there, like pepsin, which acts around pH 1 to 2. We've already discussed that. There's acid phosphatase, which acts around pH 4 to 5, and there's alkaline phosphatase, which acts at pH 10 to 11. Okay, so these are some examples, some exceptions that are present in nature, okay, in our human body, and they act at different pH ranges. So more or less it's between 6 and 8, which we have seen in alpha amylase. Enzymes from fungi and plants are most active in acidic pH 4 to 6. Okay, so extra piece of information. So now for this type of question, the options were a little weird. But if, for example, if you have given options A as proteases and B was pepsin, okay, A was proteases and B was pepsin, clearly you would choose pepsin. Okay, this is a more direct and appropriate answer to the question. So proteases, again, a big range. One of the proteases is pepsin, yes, okay, which is a hydrolase, and that form is a part of hydrolytic enzymes. Okay, so you would, in our case, yes, you would choose proteases as the appropriate answer. But if proteases and pepsin was also given as our option, then pepsin would be the right answer. Clear? Okay. Next question. Question number 16. In mammals, milk is digested by the action of, this appear in 2000. We already discussed this, okay? It's A. Renin, B. amylase, C. intestinal bacteria, and D. invertase. So clearly renin is present in infants and young mammals. And they act on the milk, okay? So prorenin gets converted to renin. Okay, and then renin then acts on the casein, okay? That's the milk protein. So renin is present in the form of prorenin, is found in young mammals. Okay, prorenin is converted to renin in the presence of HCl. Okay, and then renin then converts casein into paracasein with the help of calcium ions to form calcium paracaseinate. Okay, now please don't confuse this renin. This is a very typical case with this renin. This renin is secreted on the kidneys, okay, the JG cells of kidneys. Okay, and then they eventually form angiotensin 2, the whole RAAS, okay. Renin then breaks down angiotensinogen to angiotensin 1, and then angiotensin 1 gets converted to angiotensin 2 in the lungs. I've already discussed this in the excretory system, so please go check that out. And if there was given two options, okay, with a single N and a double N, please don't take the single N, okay. This would be a clear blunder if you have such a question and you have given two options, renin and renin, okay. They could test you on that to see if your concept is very clear on this. So this is a very common mistake that people would tend to make when reading the question. Obviously we're talking about milk digestion, so we are talking about the double N renin. It's pronounced the same way and not the single N renin. Okay, this is a completely different thing and a different function altogether. Okay, it's nothing to do with milk digestion in the human body. Alright, so don't get confused between the two. Alright, so clear. If you go back to the question, yeah, in mammals, milk is digested by the action of renin, not B, C, or D. So your answer should be A. Okay, so we've come to the end of this video lecture, and I hope you've enjoyed today's video lecture, and I hope you've learned something new today. And let me remind you, I'm available on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, so you can follow me there for more updates, and the links will be there in the description box below. Okay, and I'll see you in the next video lecture, right? So bye.